What's going on, everybody? This is Black Men Sunday. So I'm your host, Corey Sylvester Murray, and we're talking about generational wealth, mental health, finance, and business.
It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
Now, let's go and introduce today's guest. We have Lachey Reeves. This sister here is the founder of 8 Cents in a Jar, a woman-led nonprofit. This sister has a bachelor's in business management and economics from FAMU, the same school I went to. This sister also has a Master of Science in Human Resource Development Strategic Management from Nova Southeastern University. And this sister is also the Senior Vice President of Purpose, Diversity and Inclusion Administration Director at Truist Bank. Ooh, this sister doing it big. And she's also an advocate of youth personal finance. So without further ado, Lachey Reeves, welcome to Black Men Sunday, sister. How you doing?
Thank you. I am doing so great. And thank you for the intro.
Definitely. But let's go on and get started. I'm gonna give you a couple easy questions to warm the bus up. You know, when we're talking about our show is about generational wealth, finance, and business. Why is financial independence personal for you?
Wow. So let's just start there. I definitely must say my whole life was surrounded with the lack of financial independence and literacy. So let me make a long story short. I'm from South Florida. No one in my family went to college. I was only the fourth to graduate from high school. My mom died when I was 14. We received $4.2 million. In 24 months, that money was gone. So in high school, we hopped around from various couches. I went on to college. And at that time, my dad, he was going into hospice, did not have a checking, savings, life insurance, or anything. So I had to take out student loans to bury him. Then I had to adopt my younger sister and then find out that our dad was selling our identity for drugs and money. So I know you wanted to start there. So when we talk about why is this important, because I spent the first 23 years of my life knowing what it's like to be dependent on government systems, the generosity of people. And I knew what it was like being poor and not understanding finances. So the only thing that I could do was to learn how to manage finances so I could be financially independent.
And when we talk about being financially independent, let's take it back. You have these beautiful titles. Also, 40 under 40 award winner, which we've had like 5 guests that have that award on
Yes,
Black Men Sundays.
awesome.
And most of them went to FAMU. So that tells me FAMU's doing
There
something
you
great.
go.
But let's take it back to your first couple days at FAMU, your first time on the
Hmm.
set. You know,
Yes.
how did you get to FAMU? And let's talk about your journey and how you got to FAMU.
Absolutely. So my journey to FAMU was not traditional. I went the summer of 2022. I was not accepted into FAM. So I literally was going to be a roommate with one of my friends from high school, and she was staying off campus. I told no one that I wasn't accepted, that I didn't even go through the process. I just literally went with her. So we put all of our things in a U-Haul, literally bought furniture while we were in Tallahassee, had an opportunity to sublet in Jefferson Point, and the apartment was horrible. So within that U-Haul, we were searching for a two-bedroom apartment, finally found one off High Street or High Road, moved in that day. And so once we moved in, I was like, okay, let me actually go and apply to FAMU. So that's how I spent my first day. Initially, they said, "Oh, girl, you do not have the GPA, you don't have the grades. Like, what did you do in high school?" So I was telling them, like, hey, I didn't stay with anyone at the time. My mom passed. I wasn't living with my dad. And it was like, oh, you are a ward of the state. So fill out this essay and then let's see what we can do. And by day 3, I was submitted and trying to create my schedule for the fall semester. So that was my first 3 days at FAMU, really just trying to figure it out. It probably took me a year to still try to understand, like, okay, this is college life. Like, you have to pay these people. I did not know you had to pay them. So even with the first semester, I got kicked out because I could not pay my tuition.
And that's great information. And also, doing some research on you, plus, research from your publicist. It says that you battled homelessness, domestic violence, and single motherhood while you were at FAMU. Let's talk about that because I feel like, it's Black Men Sundays, but a lot of sisters, like, believe it or not, more sisters listen to the show than men. And what I'm noticing on Black Men Sundays is, when we talk about like vice presidents, when we talk about C-suite positions, a lot of Black
Mhm.
women are excelling at a higher rate than Black men, consistent with our white counterparts. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I know, and so I when some people they read the title, so they read my bio, they was like, okay, she had a good life, she went the traditional route and all of that good stuff. No, sir, not at all. So literally, like I told you, I literally got accepted into FAMU as I was moving in. And during that time, I did have some friends who were already at FAMU and they were in the Marching 100. And so band and marching band is a big part of my story in my life. So I joined the Marching 100. And that was literally my fall semester, right? And if you know anything about the Marching 100, we probably practiced more than the football team. So I was either always gone, away in practice, doing two a days, two a nights. And so we were not allowed to have guests as freshmen in the band. So what did I do? Homecoming. I brought my boyfriend from high school. He came up from South Florida doing things that we probably shouldn't done. And then 8 weeks later, I found out I'm pregnant my fall semester at FAMU. So going into the spring, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Um, I'm still trying to figure out how to raise myself, let alone, trying to bring a child in the world at 19. So I did what I knew how to do, get on public assistance. And so at that time, my boyfriend, he moved in with us and was like, okay, we're going to be a family, we're going to make it work. And one of the things that we don't talk about a lot in our community is mental health. So, not making excuses for him, but one thing that happens if your parents, have untreated trauma or, situations they're trying to carry, trying to uncover and, handle, sometimes that can be reflected on the kids. And so it started with emotional abuse and then got into physical abuse. And by the time I had my daughter, I had her alone. Where he was out and about. And then by the time he came back into the picture, it was just abusive. So I literally just had to get away. Again, all of this my freshman year at FAMU. And luckily, because of FAMU, they put me in a women's shelter. And that was really the redo of my fall semester in college, just really trying to make it. So that's how my story began getting into the C-suite.
Let's talk about, because there's some sisters that's going to be listening to this. It's going to be some sisters from FAMU I know listening to this because, I went to FAMU as well, class '03, by the way. I'm kind of old
Yes,
head.
okay, okay.
Definitely, definitely. But but on a serious tip though, what advice would you give for sisters that, okay, they're, a freshman, they're going through a lot of things that they're not telling people. They look good on the outside, but on the inside, they're having some mental health issues. So, what advice would you give for the sisters listening, or for the sisters that are in senior, junior in high school that may be going through what you went through as a freshman? Like, what advice would you give to them?
I would definitely say each story is unique and different. No one really understands what you're going through and the circumstances you have to battle. Most people would say, well, why don't you just leave? Like, just leave, which is true. Like, you definitely want to make sure you get out that situation, but you have to do it strategically, right? So I know the first time that I tried to leave because I had nothing set up and I was embarrassed. Like I didn't want to share that with my friends and then also their kids at the time too. So it was like, how do I lean on them for support when we're still trying to, figure out what support is? So the first time I tried to leave, it didn't work because I literally had no place to go. But the second time, I said, you know what? I know what it's like to not grow up with a mom, and I did not want that for my child. So the second time, I literally grabbed the car and put stuff in my car slowly but surely that, wouldn't be noticed. So a to-go bag, then a toothbrush, a toothpaste, formula, my daughter's bag, that was all within the car. So when it just got too bad and enough was enough, I literally grabbed the keys, grabbed her, just put her in the car, locked all of the doors, and then just left and never came back. So luckily that worked for me because I already had my stuff in the car. But again, everyone is different. If you can find at least one person that you can just console, build a relationship with, have them be a part of your exit and go strategy, and then just take it from there.
Yeah, that's great information. And let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, in my intro, I said you have a bachelor's in business management and economics from FAMU. What made you choose that major?
Funny story. So I'm going to date myself, but at the time they had like Yahoo career quizzes, right? So what major suits your personality? I took that quiz and it was asking me various questions. So what type of environment do you like to work in? Do you like to socialize and speak to people? Do you like to be creative? And based upon that, it said, hey, we think you will be good in public relations or business. And so I was like, okay, first of all, I didn't know what public relations was. I'm like, business, like, what does that mean? I had no idea. And it wasn't until I needed a job and I went with a friend to a bank, Bank of America. And I saw this Black college student working at the bank. I said, yo, Black people can work at the bank. So I was super excited. I went up to her. I was like, you work here? She was like, yeah, I'm a student at Florida State. I'm like, so like, how is it working? And she was like, it's good. I'm in AC, but a little racism, here and there. And I was like, so can anyone apply? She was like, yeah, like, just go to your local bank and see if they're hiring, fill out an online application. And from there, I said, hold on, let me think about this. I said, banks are always closed. They don't work on weekends. They off at 4, right? Holidays, they don't work, even off on Canadian Boxing Day, right? Sign me up. And in AC. So that is literally how I declared my major because that atmosphere worked for me and my situation. It allowed me to be a mom. So immediately after that, I went online and I found a list of all of the banks in Tallahassee, Florida. And I applied to every single one of them. And I heard back from two, Wells Fargo and Hancock Bank at the time. And I ended up getting the job at Hancock Bank. And that literally started my career. And so I started to understand, okay, this is business. Not only business, this is what is economics 101. And that's where my love for finance, financial services, and financial literacy began. They placed me on the South Side in Tallahassee, so the hood. And in the hood, the assumption was the people here are poor, they don't own assets. We just want to get them in a bank account and, if they can get extra products, so be it. So my first 6 weeks, 8 weeks at the bank, they wanted to fire me. Why? Because it was just things I did not understand. So first off, we had to, advertise our HELOCs. I'm like, well, a HELOC? Like, you mean like Hercules, like He-Man? It was like, no, HELOC, a home equity line of credit. And it was like, it's for people who own their home and they have equity within their home and they can use the equity to leverage that and, to purchase items or make repairs. It took me 3 weeks to one, understand what equity was, but then also two, to even understand that people could own their homes because I've never saw it. That was just like a foreign concept to me that I did not understand. So then it was like, okay, Lachey, HELOCs are maybe not for you. So why don't you advertise our CDs? I said, bet I can do CDs. Like, do we got Destiny's Child, like Michael Jackson CDs? I'm like, so like, are the CDs in the back? They looked at me like, who did we hire? And what is this? They was like, no, a certificate of deposit. So my boss, she was through with me, a Black woman, she was through with me. But then I had an older male and he was like, so you really don't know? I was like, no. And so he like became my mentor to just like teach me the basic concepts. And before I knew it, once I started to understand what it was, not using their script, But I had customers, I was like, "Guess what, Miss Johnson? Like, did you know you can own your home?" She's like, "Yeah, baby. I own mine for the last 20 years." And I'm like, "Ma'am, did you know that your home, it had equity and you can do all of this stuff? Like I heard you say that you wanted to do this and you can do that." And little did I know, I became number one when it comes to sales and like converting my clients to build wealth all in college. I was like, yo, this is the path that I wanted to be on, where I can talk about it in a language, not using jargon, but then just even putting two and two together. Because at the time, my clients, they had no idea like the things they can do with their home to just build additional wealth.
Let's fast forward a little bit. You're the founder of 8 Cents in a Jar, a women-led nonprofit. Let's talk about that and what was the impetus of that?
You know, it's quite amazing, just to say that we are a women-led organization. First off, this was not my plan at all to start 8 Cents in a Jar. Working in the baking industry, first starting out on the retail side, which means if you walk in a branch, I was your branch manager. At 22, your branch manager. And then from there, I did like small business lending. So I help business owners get loans and just help them grow their business. And at that time, I was like, oh, I would never, ever be a business owner. I found like that was not in my cards. But what happened when I was working at Charles Schwab, and so that was my first time working at an investment firm. And my team, we had about $50 billion under management, and I had three with my investment advisors. So at the time, I was not the financial advisor, but I was the person behind the scenes doing like risk compliance and just really helping those firms, acquire more clients. And so I used to ask the financial advisors, like, hey, I'm involved in the National Urban League Young Professionals. I want you to come talk to us. Like, they're amazing young professionals doing great things. They're making great money, but they're probably not investing or saving. Like, can you come? All of them would tell me no. Mm-mm. There's no bread and butter in me for that. Like, that is not my demographic. And I can find no one who wanted to speak with us. And so fast forward just a little bit, a year just after that, like I can't find anyone, so I'm gonna teach the class myself. Then Rollins College Upward Bound. So if you're familiar with Upward Bound, an excellent program across the US that help first generation students that could go to college while they're in high school. So I got a call. I was like, hey, Lachey, the bank that we typically hire to teach financial literacy, they canceled on us. Can you fill in? And that was my first time like teaching to high school students. So I said, okay, give me the curriculum. They gave me the curriculum and it was just so bad. Like I'm looking at, his speaking notes and, what he wanted to talk about, retirement and, leverage your parents, so they can give you $50,000 for a down payment on a house. And I was like, oh, this ain't it. Like, this is not the demographic. Like, you do not say this to them. And it really sounded like he was talking down on us. So I asked for permission, like, let me just rewrite this. Like, let me not use terminology. Let me make it storytelling about finances. So I ended up rewriting the curriculum, taught it, and it was just like in awe. So most of the times when people think about finance, financial literacy is boring, right? For most people it is. But they was like, this is the first time where not only was the students and the parents attentive, and they had to postpone the next session by 30 minutes so we can get through all of the questions. And so the director put me aside. She was like, you got something here. She was like, send us an invoice. We want to pay you for your services and we want to book you for the rest of our classes to teach financial literacy. I said, okay, I ain't have no invoice. So what I did, I was like, okay, let me create an invoice. I'm like, okay, if I create an invoice, I got to have a name. So let me come up with a name. And so for 8 cents, it was after a situation that happened in in college. So like I told you, my dad passed away while I was in college. I had to adopt my younger sister, and I found out that he was selling and using our identity. So by the time I got it fixed and, pleaded with all of the creditors and went through a 2-year dispute, I literally had 8 cents to my name. I did not have enough to even have a bank account. The bank called me, they said, "Hey, we need to close out your account and we're gonna write off your 8 cents." I said, "Nah, pimp, that's my 8 cents. Give it here." So I went to the bank, grabbed my 8 cents, came back home and threw it in a jar and never again. So that popped in my head, and that's why the company is called 8 Cents in a Jar. So I created a logo and everything, and I turned in my invoice, and I was talking to friends. I was like, "You got to make this legit." So I found paperwork, and we became a nonprofit in 2016. I told the story of why we were doing it, the name behind it. And within the first 3 weeks, we had over 500,000 shares and views, and the rest is history. So this was not the plan. It just started because someone asked, and it's been growing ever since. And now we're on year 8.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I also saw doing my research, you had a sold out event, Oak Ridge High School. Even though we worldwide, but we going Oak Ridge High School is a high school in Orlando, Florida. And you had an event called Teach Students Money Expo. It was back in April, 2 months ago. So let's talk about the benefits and the takeaways from the expo.
Absolutely. So with 8 Cents in a Jar, we like to do things different, right? So again, we are not the originators of financial literacy. By the time 8 Cents in a Jar came about, I did not do my research and didn't realize like, oh snap, it's like over 10,000 companies across the United States that teach financial literacy. So what can we do to be a competitive advantage? We don't do financial literacy for everyone. You have junior achievement and other programs for that. And we, very grateful for their service. But what about that niche core of students that have unique lived experiences that cannot be found in a textbook, that, are below poverty, marginalized, and do not have the same benefits as all of their other peers within that zip code. And then when we think about students that are in the juvenile justice system, where we look at their crimes, and if 50% of the crimes are based upon something poverty related, they're hungry, did not have enough food to eat, so they stole just so they can eat, and not only eat for themselves, but eat for their family. We're not condoning the crime, but let's address, the root cause. And that is the student population that we serve at 8 Cents in a Jar. So for that, again, it's one thing to just hear about financial literacy, but what is it like to experience it? So what we do each year, we create a city called Eightville that sits within Orlando. It has its own commissioner. The students have to pay taxes. They have a real job that is based in Central Florida with a real paycheck that they get, and they get paid for that month. And they have to live within Orlando off that paycheck and do 28 different scenarios. So if they want to rent or if they want to buy a home or a car, they have to go through that. Each student gets a unique credit score, and based upon their credit score will determine the rates that they have in Eightville. They have to open a bank accounts. If they have kids, they have to get childcare. We have students that got married, that got divorced, that had roommates, that, some students became landlords because they made a lot of money and wanted to invest. And then all of that's in a stimulated environment. Why? So that way you can feel it. It's one thing to talk about credit. It's another thing to feel having a 413 credit score and needing co-signers and loans, right? And so it allowed them to have that shock experience, but now even having a chance to, okay, let's talk about what you just went through. In real time, having money mentors. We even had financial social workers and had financial therapy built in because they were talking about like, listen, I didn't think I was going to have 5 kids. And guess what? I have to feed 5 kids. I only make $3,600 a month. My rent went up, interest rates going up, inflation. These are real conversations that students are having. So it's best that they learn it now in this controlled environment and then get the proper knowledge. Then think about us trying to figure it out on our own. Like we were doing it in real time and had to suffer those consequences. So that is to Teach Students Money Expo, a financially simulated experience for students to learn how to save money, acquire assets, and build wealth.
And how did that make you feel that, I mean, your event was sold out? Like, how did that make you feel?
So excited, but then also it tells me that we have a lot of work to do. So this was our fourth year doing it. And each year we sell out in like 2 weeks. But this year we sold out in 4 days. And we had a wait list of over 100 students. So, which is great. Like, students, they want to come. And that's the crazy part. They literally want to come and they're bringing their friends. We even have classes that come in buses to the event. So what does that tell us? We need to do this more, right? We need to have these ongoing conversations with this particular program, but then also notifying students, not just in Florida, but throughout the programs and services that we offer.
Because my whole show is about, creating generational wealth. But, and I've had, this is like 112th show, right here. So, I mean, that's 112 hours of financial literacy. So people, I'm sick of the excuses. I'm sick of, oh, I didn't know. Nah, I got 112 hours. What you mean you ain't know? So my
Right.
question for you is like for parents out here, that say, my child too young, he's not gonna or she's not gonna understand financial literacy right now. Like at what age, given your expertise, at what age should children start learning about financial literacy, just period?
As young as 5 years old. So we start at 8, right? People assume you have to be an adult to really start generating wealth or just generating income. No, you don't. So one of the things that students have that we don't have is more time. So with that time, why not teach them young? So as 5, your kids are watching. So as you go to the store, you take them to the store and they're like, oh, can I have this? And you're like, I don't have any money. Oh, well, just pull out the plastic card. And we have real students, telling us that or telling their parents that. So whether you realize it or not, your kids are watching you. If you have great financial habits, they're soaking that up. If are still building your habits and, going through pitfalls along the way, guess what? They're picking that up as well. So even for me, I did not know that I could own a bank account or I could have a bank account. Why? My parents did not have a bank account. I remember the time, the day, and the space when I was 17 and I first heard the word credit union. And it was like, oh, well, it's invite only. I got it because my parents, have an account. I was like, man. But it wasn't until literally 17 and I was telling my friend's mom, she's like, oh, no, 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 everyone can get a bank account. And she took me to go do that, right? I had all the knowledge at my fingertips. The internet was out and just all of that. But because I lived on lived experience and I saw what I saw growing up, that 2 and 2 just didn't click. So even with that, that's really why we want to start young. And for our parents, some of them just don't know. Like we get it, right? Even if you do research, it's a lot of terminology and it's a lot of different, avenues that you can take and you may not know where to go, and that's cool. That's why for 8 cents in a jar, we have up to a 3 generational approach program. So let me explain to you what that is. We have a student stock market challenge where students receive $100,000 to invest and learn how to invest. They learn their risk tolerance, they learn how to invest stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. We even go into options. Not something they do options, but they understand the technical analysis behind it, right? And what we realized as we're teaching it to the students, again, plain layman terms, nothing too big, starting around with stuff around our houses to teach them. We realized parents and grandparents were in on the lesson. And if the students couldn't make it, we had the auntie at work was like, nah, I'm filling in for my family. Like, we need this lesson. We need to figure out what we're going to do with these bonds, right? And so, with that, that morphed into our family stock market challenge, where we literally have families now compete against other families, learning how to invest. So, let me bring it back to your original question. So, as young as 5, you know, start having those conversations the same way you can put a 2-year-old with your phone, they on YouTube, they taking pictures, they know how to do TikToks. They can use that same knowledge to learn, how to invest, right? So for us, it's 8 because we're 8 cents in a jar. And then even with that, we still invite the family to get involved in this because it's generational wealth and we want our students to be a generational starter.
Definitely great information. Yeah, because when we talk about generational wealth, we talk about generational trauma. We also talk about financial trauma and finance anxiety. So for the
Yes.
parents out there, 'cause now I'm about to jump into your senior VP skills now. So when we're talking about like, especially we're in an inflationary period, bills are higher, credit card debt is higher. So that means I'm not putting as much money in my savings account because my credit card's sucking it up. Matter of fact, I'm gonna keep it real. This Black Men Sundays, man. I got my credit card sent me a note in the mail. They said, "Hey, thank you for being a valued customer, but your rate's gonna go up." And I said, "What?" So that's
Yep.
taking money out. But what advice would you give, for customers at a bank where we don't have as much money to invest or put in our savings account because the money is basically getting sucked? Like, what advice would you give us?
Indeed. So here's what I learned. One, I do not give financial advice, but I will let you know what I would do as Lachey, Chantel, Quantiana Reeves, right? We all been in that situation where our money ain't moneying right. Like no matter what we do, we try to rob Peter to pay Paul, like it's still not working. And one of the things that I learned early on, temporary sacrifices for permanent gains. So let me say that again. Temporary sacrifices for permanent gains. Yes, we deserve nice things and we want to like treat ourselves. But one of the things that I learned in college, and I'm so grateful that I did it, if I can just sacrifice 2 years of being uncomfortable, it will give me a lifetime of comfort. So, what did that mean? Anytime that I wanted to spend money, I asked myself on a scale of 1 to 10, is this purchase going to get me to where I need to be? And before I could even understand where I needed to be, I needed to understand where I did not want to be. So I wanted to finally be done with Section 8 and food stamps because I got tired of going to the office and them degrading me or just assuming I wasn't going to be nothing, right? And I wanted to own a home. Like I got tired of moving every year. I wanted to just have my own bed. I wanted my daughter to have her own bed and always have a centralized place for home. And that was the part of the financial safety that I wanted to create. So that was one. So I literally had to write that down. And then before I knew it, I had like 100 different things of what I wanted and what I did not want. So anytime for the next 2 years, I made a purchase on a scale of 1 to 10. It had to be an 8 or better. I could not spend my money on things that gave me instant gratification, but would take away or prolong this 2-year period that I set for myself. So if that meant that I had to continue eating oodles and noodles, so be it. Also, what that meant, multiple streams of income. I realized that just having one source of income was not going to cut it, period. Like it just wasn't happening. So, one of the things that I did know, all of us have a God given gift or talent, no matter how big or how small. So, for most Black men and women, like that one friend that's gonna cut your hair, they're gonna line you up right. You also have that one friend, they're gonna do your hair, they're gonna do your nice braids. That wasn't me, pimp. Couldn't do either. So here's what I did. Okay, I know for my sisters, we're gonna get our hair braided during the summer, right? So I used to charge my friends $5 to $10 to help them take out their braids. And they're like, oh, that's chunk change. Like, come over. What? So listen, I'm in their house using their AC, watching their cable, eating their food, and they're paying me $5 to $10 to help take out their braids. The first summer I did that, I made $500. That's $500 I did not have before. And guess what? I used all of that 500. I'm lying, not all of it, but 80% of it. So 80% of what I received in my side hustle went towards my savings so I can, do what I needed to do. And the 20% I did splurge on that. So I think for me, if I were to give advice, but I'm not, but I realized, okay, for 2 years, if I can just hustle hard, right? Hustle real hard and then just make those temporary sacrifices. That is what led me to save up $10,000 as my down payment for my first home. That is what allowed me to have enough money to move from Tallahassee to Birmingham to start my career in banking. That is what led me to then have enough money to, now get my daughter tested and finding out that she had a developmental delay in getting her the medicine that she needs. But if I never did that, one, just write down where I wanted my life to go, but then two, embracing side hustles, no matter how big or how small, and using 80% of that money to go towards those goals. And then third, really understanding my spending and understanding, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, all of my purchases need to be an 8 or better. That would be the advice if I were to give advice to adults to really shift and start the change in mindset and the relationship that we have with money.
Great information. Yeah. And again, all the questions are from your point of view, from your perspective. And before I let you go, I have like three more questions. I'm gonna ask you the real hard one right now. Are you enjoying yourself on Black Men Sundays?
I am. Listen, I need to tell my husband and tell everyone else. This is gonna become a staple in our home. So yes.
Wow, that's what I'm talking about. And my second to last question, I might get one more out, but Senior Vice President, Purpose, Diversity, Inclusion Administration Director at Truist Bank. What does that mean?
Right, because it's a long title. So pretty much in short, all banks, we are regulated by, some form of government entity, have a relationship. So you think of FDIC, so the place that you have insurance, along with the Federal Reserve, there are certain assessments and data that you have to send to them from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint. It is my job to hold the organization accountable from a DEI perspective, but then also when we think about the culture of the organization and the purpose of our teammates and then the clients that we serve. So I do everything on the administrative compliance and risk side to hold the organization accountable from those departments, but then also to validate what we say is true and accurate and making sure that we are holding up to the standards that we set forth. So one thing I do want to say, a few people asked me in April, was like, okay, Lachey, why do you talk about mental health and within finance, like there isn't a correlation. And so I definitely just want to say there is a correlation, and that's one of the things that really make Eight Cents in a Jar unique, is that we do incorporate financial therapy, financial social work, and start the financial healing from financial trauma of our students. So think about, for young students, if you saw, your light bill or any bills getting turned off and you didn't have those things, or if you got evicted, you lost your home, or you see a car being repossessed, or even saying, your parents say, hey, we don't got it, and you were growing up without those luxury items and all of your friends did. Believe it or not, that started to form some relationship with financial trauma, whether it be good or bad. And so one of the things that we realized at Aces in a Jar, before we can help our students become the first millionaires in their family and be generational starters of wealth, we have to unpack that financial trauma. Because if we have students that are so afraid to even talk about money because it was never talked about, in their home, or they have a negative, memory of it, we got to uncover that. We have to address it, and we have to make sure they, start on the path to healing. So in addition to financial social workers, we also have great relationship with mental health counselors that will embed that in all of the 8 programs and services that we have. So for our students to save money, acquire assets, and build wealth, financial healing, we have to uncover financial trauma. And then also, even for our young adults, uncovering corporate trauma as well. All of that is a big part of healing and a big part of generational wealth.
Wow, great information. And we're gonna have to collaborate. Black Men Sundays, 8 cents in a jar. I can see a collaboration coming up with the news station and all that. That's we're gonna have to collaborate. So I thank you again, Lachey Reeves. Thanks for coming on Black Men Sundays. Fam, you up in here.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. So thanks for coming on Black Men Sundays. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. and have a great work week.
Thank you so much. Have a great Sunday.
It's a black man Sunday.